Goodfellas isn't just a mob classic, it's a film packed with secrets hiding in plain sight. From shocking improvisations to strange behind-the-scenes mishaps, Martin Scorsese's masterpiece has layers most fans never catch on the first watch. Some moments were accidents, others carefully planted details that only the sharpest eyes notice. Here are 20 weird facts about Goodfellas that will change the way you see the film forever. Number 1. Much of Goodfellas is literally pulled from the real Henry Hill's life. Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas is one of the rare gangster films where the line between fact and fiction is almost non-existent. Rather than being purely a Hollywood creation, the movie draws heavily from the real life of Henry Hill, a low-level mobster whose career spanned from petty hustling to major organized crime. The screenplay was adapted from Nicholas Pileggi's best-selling nonfiction book, Wise Guy, which itself was based on years of interviews and deep reporting into Hill's life and his involvement with the Lucchese crime family. Nearly every defining event in the movie, from the infamous Lufthansa heist to the brutal murder of Billy Batts, was pulled directly from Hill's recollections. What makes the film so authentic is that Hill was not just a background figure. He lived through these moments and offered raw details about mob operations, loyalty, and betrayal. For example, the Lufthansa heist shown in the movie was one of the largest cash robberies in American history, netting millions of dollars, and Hill's inside knowledge helped Pileggi and Scorsese craft a scene that felt both cinematic and terrifyingly real. His descriptions of how he first got drawn into mob life, running errands for gangsters as a kid and slowly becoming part of their world, were translated almost word for word onto the screen. Even smaller moments, like the mobster's casual banter, the cooking scenes in prison, and the paranoia of living under constant surveillance, all stemmed from Hill's own stories. This commitment to realism is why Goodfellas resonates as more than just a crime drama. It's a portrait of an actual man's rise and fall in the mafia, told with all the grit, danger, and tragic allure of the world he once called home. Number 2. The Copacabana sequence was one uninterrupted, single, continuous tracking shot. One of the most unforgettable moments in Goodfellas is the Copacabana nightclub sequence, a dazzling example of Martin Scorsese's ability to merge storytelling with cinematic technique. The scene, in which Henry Hill impresses Karen by escorting her through the back entrance of the legendary New York club, is filmed as a single, uninterrupted tracking shot, often referred to as a owner. Rather than cutting between angles, the camera follows Henry and Karen continuously as they weave through the bustling world behind the scenes. Down a flight of steps, through the kitchen full of busy cooks, into narrow hallways, and finally out into the glamorous main floor of the Copa, where a table materializes just for them. Pulling off this type of shot was no simple feat. Scorsese and his cinematographer Michael Ballhaus meticulously planned the long, fluid camera movement so that every detail, timing, blocking, and background activity synced perfectly. The shot required enormous coordination. Waiters had to move at the right moment, extras had to deliver lines of dialogue or carry trays without hesitation, and the dolly operator had to keep the camera gliding smoothly. Any mistake meant restarting the entire take. The sequence is not just technical bravura, it immerses the audience in Karen's point of view, showing the magnetic pull of Henry's world and the effortless influence he wields. The Copacabana shot has since become iconic in film history, studied by filmmakers for its ambition and fluid execution. Beyond its artistry, the scene functions as pure storytelling, capturing both the seduction and the power of mob life in a way that dialogue alone could never convey. Number 3. Joe Pesci's Funny How scene comes from a real incident he experienced as a waiter. One of the most legendary moments in Goodfellas is the Funny How scene, where Joe Pesci's character, Tommy DeVito, suddenly turns a lighthearted compliment into a terrifying confrontation. The moment begins with Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, laughing and telling Tommy that he's funny. What seems like harmless banter quickly shifts as Tommy's expression hardens, and he leans into Henry with the now iconic line, "Funny how? How am I funny? Do I amuse you?" The room goes silent, and the tension is palpable until Tommy finally breaks and reveals he was joking. The scene has become one of the most quoted in the film, and a defining moment in gangster cinema. What makes it even more remarkable is that the exchange wasn't just a scripted invention. Pesci drew inspiration from a real-life incident he had experienced years earlier while working as a young waiter. He once casually told a mobster that he was funny, only to have the man react with sudden menace, demanding to know if Pesci was mocking him. That chilling encounter stuck with Pesci, and when Goodfellas was being developed, he recounted the story to Martin Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi. Scorsese loved the idea so much that he encouraged Pesci and Liotta to improvise the moment on set, allowing the dialogue to unfold naturally within the framework of the script. The result is a scene that feels completely unpredictable and real, showcasing not only Pesci's volatile, Oscar-winning performance, but also the dangerous unpredictability of mob life. It highlights how quickly casual joking could turn into deadly seriousness, underscoring the thin line between camaraderie and violence in the world Henry inhabited. Number 4. Real mob-connected people worked as extras and influenced details on set. One of the reasons Goodfellas feels so authentic is because it wasn't just crafted from research and imagination. It was built with input from people who actually lived in the world it depicts. In an effort to capture the nuances of mob life with accuracy, Martin Scorsese and his team brought in extras who had real connections to organized crime. Many of the faces seen in the background of neighborhood hangouts, bars, and club scenes weren't typical Hollywood actors, but men and women familiar with the rhythms, gestures, and culture of the mafia. Their presence lent a layer of credibility that professional actors alone might not have been able to replicate. Beyond simply filling out the set, these individuals influenced the film in subtle but important ways. They offered guidance on details that might otherwise have been overlooked. How certain mobsters carried themselves, the way money or drinks were exchanged, even the slang and offhand jokes that made conversations feel natural. Scorsese, known for his obsession with authenticity, encouraged the cast and crew to absorb these mannerisms. Wardrobe and props also benefited from insider knowledge, with consultants advising on which suits, jewelry, and cars would be considered appropriate or flashy in the mob world of the 1950s through the 1980s. This blending of Hollywood craft with real-world input helped create a film that feels less like a stylized crime drama and more like a lived-in portrait of mafia life. Viewers aren't just watching actors play gangsters. They're watching a cinematic world shaped by people who understood the mob from the inside. It's this attention to authenticity that makes Goodfellas enduringly powerful and chilling. Number 5. The film's profanity count far exceeded what the script originally called for. One of the most striking features of Goodfellas is its relentless, raw use of language, particularly profanity, which became a hallmark of the film's intense realism. While Nicholas Pileggi's original Wise Guy book and the screenplay provided a framework of dialogue, the finished film contains far more expletives than initially scripted. Mental Floss and other sources have noted that the F-word alone is used over 300 times, making it one of the most profanity-laden mainstream films in cinematic history. This wasn't accidental or gratuitous, it was a deliberate choice by Martin Scorsese to capture the authentic rhythms of mob life. Scorsese encouraged his actors, Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and the rest, to speak as their characters would in real life. In the criminal underworld, interactions were seldom polite or restrained. Arguments, camaraderie, and casual conversation alike were peppered with harsh, colorful language. Many of the most memorable lines in Goodfellas were improvised on set, as actors leaned into their characters' volatile personalities, and Scorsese allowed these naturalistic bursts of dialogue to remain. This improvisation gave the film a kinetic energy, a sense that the camera was capturing real people rather than actors reciting lines. The sheer frequency of the profanity also serves a storytelling function. It underlines the volatility of the mob world, where tension can escalate instantly and violence lurks beneath the surface of casual conversation. In combination with the film's fluid camera work, meticulously staged scenes, and vivid period detail, the dialogue creates an immersive, almost documentary-like portrait of life in organized crime. The barrage of expletives isn't just shock value, it's the linguistic fingerprint of a dangerous, unpredictable world. Number 6. Much of the film's gangster color came from real objects. Actual jewelry, cars, and cash were used. A key element that gives Goodfellas its vibrant, lived-in texture is the remarkable attention to physical authenticity, particularly in the props and set dressing. Martin Scorsese was famously obsessed with creating a world that felt real down to the smallest detail, and this extended to the objects the characters interacted with on screen. Rather than relying solely on replicas or facsimiles, the production sought out genuine period-appropriate items. Classic cars from the 1950s through the 1980s were painstakingly sourced to populate the streets, driveways, and scenes of the film, ensuring that every vehicle matched the era and social status of its owner. Jewelry was another crucial detail in selling the allure and power of the mob lifestyle. For close-up shots, real rings, watches, and chains were used so that the gleam and weight would appear natural on camera. Scorsese and the prop team understood that fake jewelry often looks flat or unreal under the lighting of a film set, and these subtle visual cues helped immerse the audience in the world of organized crime. Even the cash seen in the film wasn't simply printed prop money. Real bills were employed for certain shots, handled carefully by the prop department to avoid loss, theft, or legal issues. The use of actual currency made the scenes of theft, bribery, and lavish spending feel tangibly real, adding weight to the narrative. By combining these authentic objects with meticulous production design, Scorsese created a visual vocabulary of wealth, danger, and excess that felt grounded in reality. The glint of a genuine gold chain, the roar of a classic car engine, and the physical heft of real money all serve to reinforce the seductive, perilous world Henry Hill inhabited. This commitment to authenticity helps Goodfellas resonate as not just a crime film, but a vivid historical portrait of the mob lifestyle. Number 7. Ray Liotta recorded multiple versions of Henry's voiceover, sometimes speaking to a real person for realism. A defining element of Goodfellas is its use of Henry Hill's voiceover narration delivered by Ray Liotta, which provides the film with its intimate, confessional tone. Unlike many voiceovers that are carefully scripted and delivered in isolation, Liotta's approach was far more organic. To make Henry's perspective feel authentic and conversational, he recorded multiple versions of the narration, experimenting with tone, pacing, and emphasis to capture the nuances of a man reflecting on his life in the mob. What sets Liotta's performance apart is that, in some takes, he didn't just read lines into a microphone, he spoke directly to a real person in the room. By treating the recording sessions as if he were telling a story to a friend or confidant, Liotta was able to infuse the narration with spontaneity, warmth, and subtle humor, as well as moments of tension and regret. This method allowed Scorsese to capture the rhythm of natural speech, with pauses, inflections, and reactions that make Henry's account feel like an unguarded confession rather than a rehearsed exposition. The process required careful experimentation. Liotta and Scorsese recorded multiple takes of the same passages, sometimes adjusting phrasing or emotional delivery to match the visual tone of the scenes. The result is a voiceover that acts as a bridge between the audience and Henry's inner world, offering insights into his ambitions, fears, and moral compromises. It grounds the film in a deeply personal perspective, transforming Goodfellas from a straightforward crime story into a layered, immersive experience where viewers feel as though they are being led in on secrets only Henry himself could reveal. This approach helped make the voiceover one of the most iconic and studied elements in modern cinema. Number 8. The Lufthansa heist was one of the largest cash robberies in U.S. history, and Pileggi documented it. One of the most dramatic threads in Goodfellas is the Lufthansa heist, a crime so audacious and lucrative that it continues to be remembered as one of the largest cash robberies in American history. In December 1978, armed robbers connected to the Lucchese crime family infiltrated a Lufthansa cargo terminal at New York's JFK Airport, making off with nearly $6 million in cash and jewelry, an astronomical sum at the time. The sheer scale of the theft captured national headlines, and its ripple effects sent shockwaves through the underworld for years to come. Nicholas Pileggi, whose non-fiction book Wise Guy became the basis for the film, documented the heist and its brutal aftermath in painstaking detail. Through Henry Hill's perspective, Pileggi revealed not just the planning and execution, but also the paranoia that followed. In the months after the robbery, many of the men involved were murdered, allegedly by mob bosses who feared they would draw attention or refuse to hand over their share. These killings created an atmosphere of dread that the film captures vividly, especially in the haunting montage showing bodies turning up in cars, trucks, and meat lockers. Scorsese weaves this true crime event into the film not just as spectacle, but as a pivotal turning point. The Lufthansa score represents both the height of the crew's ambition and the beginning of their unraveling. For Henry, it illustrates the intoxicating rewards of mob life, but also the ruthless violence and treachery that were never far behind. By grounding the story in a real headline-making robbery, Goodfellas blurs the line between historical record and cinematic drama, giving the film its enduring power as both entertainment and chilling reflection of organized crime's reach. Number 9. Joe Pesci only agreed to act after being persuaded. He was still a musician and reluctant actor. Before Goodfellas, Joe Pesci was better known as a musician and comedian than a Hollywood actor. Although he had appeared in films in smaller roles, he was far from a household name and had no interest in pursuing stardom. When Martin Scorsese approached him to play Tommy DeVito, the unpredictable, violent, and darkly humorous mobster, Pesci was hesitant. He worried about committing to such an intense character and the demands of a major film role, especially one that required balancing menace with charisma. It took persistent persuasion from friends, colleagues, and Scorsese himself to convince him that he was the perfect fit for the part. Once on board, Pesci fully embraced the role, bringing a raw energy and unpredictability that transformed Tommy DeVito into one of cinema's most memorable characters. He drew upon his own instincts and experiences, improvising lines and reactions that kept both his fellow actors and the audience on edge. His performance captured the volatility of mob life, making Tommy alternately charming, funny, and terrifying within the same scene. The infamous "Funny How" sequence is a perfect example of this, where Pesci's ability to shift from casual humor to explosive threat in an instant made the moment legendary. Pesci's portrayal earned universal acclaim, with critics highlighting his intensity, timing, and authenticity. His work in Goodfellas was rewarded with the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, cementing his reputation as a powerhouse performer. What began as reluctance transformed into a career-defining role, one that showcased not only Pesci's talent, but also the collaborative vision of Scorsese in shaping a character who would become iconic in both gangster cinema and popular culture. Number 10. Many small scenes were improvised and became iconic, and unplanned lines stayed in. One of the hallmarks of Goodfellas' enduring energy and realism is the film's extensive use of improvisation, which brought a sense of spontaneity rarely seen in crime dramas. While Nicholas Pileggi's Wise Guy and the screenplay provided a detailed blueprint of the story, Martin Scorsese treated the script more as a foundation than a rigid set of instructions. He encouraged his actors to experiment with dialogue, gestures, and reactions, allowing scenes to breathe naturally. This approach transformed ordinary moments, such as conversations in bars, banter in cars, or neighborhood interactions, into sequences that feel immediate, lived in, and sometimes unpredictable. Many of the film's most memorable moments came from these unplanned contributions. Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and even background actors improvised lines or reactions that were retained in the final cut, often because they captured a truth that scripted dialogue could not. Small, seemingly incidental interactions, like a sarcastic quip, a flustered glance, or a sudden outburst, added layers to the characters and made the mob world feel dangerous and dynamic. For instance, Pesci's legendary "funny how" scene was shaped in part by his instinctive delivery, a product of improvisation combined with Scorsese's guidance. The improvisational style also extended to group dynamics and background activity. Extras were sometimes encouraged to interact naturally with the main actors, creating an organic, bustling environment that enhanced the film's authenticity. By allowing the actors to inhabit the world and respond in real time, Scorsese captured a kinetic realism that has rarely been matched. These spontaneous moments, which could have been dismissed as unplanned, instead became iconic, contributing to Goodfellas' reputation as a masterclass in blending meticulous planning with inspired improvisation. Number 11. The film's structure purposely blends glamour and banality to make criminal life feel mundane. A defining feature of Goodfellas is its deliberate contrast between the glamorous and the mundane, a structural choice that shapes the audience's understanding of mob life. Martin Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi were intent on showing that organized crime isn't just about high-stakes heists and shocking violence. It's also a world filled with everyday routines, domestic moments, and small pleasures. From Henry Hill and his friends carefully dressing in expensive suits, counting cash, or enjoying family dinners, the film emphasizes that these ordinary aspects coexist seamlessly with murder, betrayal, and constant danger. This duality makes the criminal lifestyle both seductive and horrifying at the same time. Scorsese often juxtaposes scenes of elegance and excitement with abrupt, brutal violence, underscoring the unpredictable nature of life in the mob. A festive dinner can shift in an instant to a tense, threatening encounter. A successful robbery leads not only to wealth but also paranoia and eventual bloodshed. These contrasts serve to normalize the extraordinary, showing how characters become desensitized to danger and death. Critics have long noted that this thematic layering gives Goodfellas its unique energy. The glamour draws viewers in, while the ever-present threat of violence keeps them on edge. The film's structure mirrors Henry Hill's perspective, capturing the intoxicating allure of the lifestyle while revealing its inherent fragility. Money, luxury, and camaraderie are constantly undercut by fear, treachery, and moral decay. By blending moments of beauty and banality with episodes of brutality, Scorsese and Pileggi craft a portrait of organized crime that feels immersive, authentic, and morally complex. Viewers experience the thrill and the peril simultaneously, which is why Goodfellas remains a landmark in both crime cinema and character-driven storytelling. Number 12. Some on-set choices were made to reflect the true story's time jumps, period-accurate music, fashion, and decor. In Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese and his production team went to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the passage of time felt tangible and authentic, reflecting the decades spanned by Henry Hill's life in the mob. One of the primary ways this was achieved was through the deliberate use of period-accurate music, fashion, and set design. Each sequence is carefully anchored in its respective era, allowing viewers to intuitively understand when events are taking place without relying solely on dialogue or exposition. Classic rock hits, Motown tracks, and pop songs punctuate key moments, often underscoring character emotions or the tone of a scene while simultaneously serving as an audible timestamp. Costumes and wardrobe were equally critical. Characters' clothing evolves alongside the decades, reflecting shifts in style, social norms, and the increasing prosperity or pretension of Hill and his associates. From the sharp, understated suits of the 1950s to the flashier, ostentatious attire of the 1970s and 1980s, wardrobe choices signal both historical context and personal transformation. Likewise, the production design, the furniture, lighting, decor, and even small set details like telephones, cars, and household items was meticulously curated to mirror each time period. Kitchens, bars, and nightclubs all carry visual cues that place the audience firmly in the era being depicted. These on-set choices do more than provide visual or auditory authenticity. They subtly reinforce the story's progression and character development. Music cues, costume shifts, and environmental details work in concert to mark the passage of time, echoing Hill's own memories and experiences. By weaving these elements seamlessly into the narrative, Scorsese transforms Goodfellas into a richly layered portrait of both a man's life and the evolving cultural landscape around him, giving the film a depth and realism that few crime dramas achieve. Number 13. The maid scene, Tommy getting made, has layers of real mob ritual that were researched for accuracy. The maid scene in Goodfellas, where Tommy DeVito is officially inducted into the mafia, is one of the film's most culturally and emotionally layered sequences, blending narrative drama with authentic ritual. In real life, being maid is more than just a title. It is a formal initiation that signifies trust, loyalty, and lifelong commitment to the family. Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi were meticulous in their research, consulting historical accounts, former mob associates, and law enforcement records to capture the ceremony's symbolism, gestures, and atmosphere with precision. Every detail, the positioning of participants, the exchange of ritual objects, and the ceremonial language, was carefully considered to make the scene feel grounded and believable. The film depicts Tommy's induction not as a theatrical spectacle, but as a serious, almost sacred moment within the criminal subculture. The crew worked to ensure that the ceremony carried the weight of real-world tradition, showing the tension, reverence, and subtle intimidation inherent in such events. Small visual and auditory cues, the lighting, the placement of religious icons, the hushed murmurs, and the observing family members, combine to convey that this is a rite of passage with deep significance. The scene also reflects the psychological power of the ritual. It legitimizes Tommy's status while simultaneously foreshadowing the danger and moral compromises that accompany full membership in the mob. By treating the maid ceremony with painstaking accuracy, Scorsese elevates it beyond a plot point into a moment that resonates culturally and narratively. The audience not only witnesses a pivotal step in Tommy's criminal career, but also gains insight into the structured, almost ceremonial world of organized crime. The attention to real-life detail, the research-backed rituals, the cultural context, and the careful staging underscores the film's commitment to authenticity, making the induction feel both thrilling and chillingly real. Number 14. Many of the movie's small neighborhood storefronts and diners were real New York locations you can still find. A key factor in Goodfellas' sense of realism comes from its extensive use of actual New York City locations, particularly in Queens, Brooklyn, and surrounding neighborhoods where Henry Hill and his associates lived and worked. Rather than relying on constructed sets or studio backlots, Martin Scorsese and his production team scouted real storefronts, bars, diners, and streets that reflected the authentic milieu of the city's working-class Italian-American neighborhoods in the 1950s through the 1980s. This commitment to shooting on location helped the film capture the textures, architecture, and energy of urban life, grounding the story in a world that audiences could believe, and for some, recognize personally. Many of the neighborhood storefronts, pizzerias, and diners used in the film remain intact today, making them pilgrimage sites for devoted fans. Walking past the exterior of a bar or restaurant seen in the movie immediately evokes the world of Goodfellas, from the casual conversations of mobsters to the everyday bustle of city life. Scorsese often framed scenes to incorporate the authentic street life around these locations, blending background activity with the main action to enhance the immersive quality. The naturalistic settings, brick sidewalks, neon signs, old-fashioned storefronts, convey both nostalgia and grit, highlighting the contrast between the glamour of the mob's wealth and the ordinariness of their neighborhoods. Shooting in real locations also influenced the actors' performances. Being surrounded by genuine streets, shops, and diners allowed them to move and interact naturally, responding to the spatial reality of the city rather than imagining a set. This choice not only enriched the visual storytelling but reinforced the cultural and historical specificity of the film. By embedding Goodfellas in recognizable, authentic New York locales, Scorsese ensured that the movie's world feels lived in, enduringly tangible, and inseparable from the city that shaped the real-life Henry Hill. Number 15. The Billy Batts murder is striking because it's based on an actual revenge killing. One of the most shocking and unforgettable moments in Goodfellas is the murder of Billy Batts, a scene whose intensity and brutality are drawn directly from real-life events chronicled by Nicholas Pileggi. In the film, Tommy DeVito viciously beats Batts in a fit of rage over an insult, leading to his death. This sequence is not merely dramatic embellishment. It mirrors the way actual mob conflicts escalated over perceived slights, personal grudges, and the rigid codes of respect that governed organized crime. Batts's character is based on real figures in Henry Hill's world, and the scene captures both the unpredictability and the cold efficiency of mob reprisals. Pileggi's reporting emphasizes that killings like this were rarely isolated incidents. They were part of a broader system of vendettas and power struggles. The murder of Batts triggers fear, paranoia, and calculated cover-ups, highlighting the vicious logic of mob life. In the film, the casual way Henry, Tommy, and Jimmy dispose of the body, wrapping it up, loading it into a car, and dumping it without hesitation, underscores how normalized violence had become in their world. The contrast between the sudden, shocking violence and the routine, almost bureaucratic aftermath makes the scene viscerally disturbing, demonstrating that in the mafia, murder was both a tool and a consequence of breaking unspoken rules. The scene's realism lies in its adherence to the psychological and cultural realities Pileggi documented. Revenge killings were never merely sensational events. They were pivotal, life-altering actions that reinforced hierarchy, loyalty, and fear. By portraying both the savage attack and the matter-of-fact cleanup, Scorsese immerses viewers in the moral and social mechanics of organized crime, showing why these crimes were not just headline-grabbing episodes, but defining moments in the lives of those involved. The Billy Batts murder remains a stark reminder of the lethal consequences of pride and provocation in the mob world. Number 16. Scorsese shot scenes in chronological order when he could, to help actor immersion. Martin Scorsese took an unusual approach to shooting Goodfellas that significantly contributed to the film's intensity and realism. Whenever possible, he filmed scenes in chronological order. In most large-scale productions, scenes are shot out of sequence due to logistical and budgetary constraints, but Scorsese recognized that the story's emotional arc, Henry Hill's gradual immersion into the seductive yet violent world of organized crime, would benefit if actors experienced events in the same order as their characters. By filming blocks of scenes sequentially, he allowed the cast to inhabit the progression from youthful curiosity and ambition to moral compromise, paranoia, and fear. This method proved particularly effective for the actors' performances. Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, and Robert De Niro could internalize their characters' evolving states of mind, reacting to cumulative tension rather than jumping between disconnected moments. Scenes involving small triumphs like the thrill of a successful robbery could naturally build into subsequent bursts of paranoia and violence, mirroring the character's psychological journey. The result is a sense of continuity and inevitability in the narrative. The audience feels the slow, inexorable pull of the mob lifestyle, rather than perceiving it as a series of isolated events. Shooting in chronological order also amplified the impact of the film's most intense sequences. For instance, the descent into betrayal and bloodshed gains emotional weight because the actors' performances carry the residue of prior scenes. Even improvisational moments and spontaneous reactions benefit from this method, as the actors respond in real time to the cumulative tension of their characters' lives. Scorsese's commitment to this approach, though logistically demanding, reinforced Goodfellas' immersive realism, making the story's rise and fall feel organic and the descent into violence unrelenting yet tragically believable. Number 17. The movie helped change how TV shows, like The Sopranos, portray organized crime. Goodfellas didn't just redefine gangster cinema, it reshaped the way organized crime would be portrayed on television for decades to come. Before Scorsese's 1990 masterpiece, many TV shows and movies treated the mafia primarily as a stylized, almost mythic force, emphasizing flashy heists, action, and larger-than-life characters. Goodfellas, by contrast, grounded the story in painstakingly observed reality. It showed gangsters negotiating both family obligations and criminal enterprise, celebrating small victories, and enduring everyday pressures, all while operating in a world where betrayal and violence lurked around every corner. This nuanced, morally complex portrayal created a template that television producers would later adopt, most notably in shows like The Sopranos. David Chase and other creators of prestige mob dramas have openly acknowledged the influence of Scorsese's film. The way Goodfellas intertwines the personal and the professional, Henry Hill's home life, his relationships, and his mundane routines set against robberies, murders, and escalating paranoia, offered a blueprint for TV narratives that could sustain long-form storytelling. By showing that organized crime isn't just spectacle, but a world governed by rules, habits, and human foibles, the film demonstrated how morally ambiguous characters could command audience empathy even while committing horrific acts. Additionally, Goodfellas' stylistic innovations, the kinetic camera work, naturalistic dialogue, and use of voiceover to provide psychological insight, also inspired television directors to experiment with similar techniques. The seamless integration of humor, glamour, and brutality became a hallmark of later mob-centered TV, where episodes could linger on ordinary domesticity one moment and erupt into violence the next. In this way, Goodfellas didn't merely entertain, it reshaped the cultural vocabulary of organized crime storytelling, influencing a generation of writers, directors, and showrunners who sought to capture the same blend of authenticity, intensity, and moral complexity on the small screen. Number 18. The film's casting included many character actors who were local or who had lived close to that world. A significant factor in Goodfellas' immersive realism lies in Martin Scorsese's careful casting, which went far beyond the three leads. While Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, and Joe Pesci provided star power and commanding performances, the supporting cast was deliberately composed of actors who could lend authenticity to the film's depiction of working-class Italian-American mob culture. Many of these character actors were local to New York or had grown up in neighborhoods similar to those shown on screen, giving them a lived-in familiarity with the mannerisms, speech patterns, and social dynamics of the world Scorsese wanted to portray. These actors filled bars, diners, streets, and social gatherings with performances that felt effortless and natural, enhancing the texture of the film. Their presence allowed scenes to breathe, whether through casual background conversations, offhand gestures, or subtle facial expressions that conveyed both camaraderie and menace. Even minor characters, neighbors, hangers-on, or peripheral criminals, felt fully realized, contributing to the sense that the audience was observing a real community rather than a constructed set of vignettes. Scorsese often encouraged improvisation among these actors, which meant that small details, jokes, or reactions could emerge organically, further grounding the narrative in realism. By blending seasoned stars with these authentic, street-savvy performers, Scorsese achieved a balance between dramatic gravitas and verisimilitude. The leads could drive the narrative with charisma and intensity, while the supporting cast reinforced the social and cultural world around them, making the environment itself a character in the story. This thoughtful casting strategy ensured that Goodfellas didn't just tell the story of mobsters. It made viewers feel immersed in the very streets, bars, and neighborhoods where such a life unfolded, heightening both the drama and the film's enduring impact. Number 19. The movie broke with glorification. Even the lavish lifestyle is framed as hollow and dangerous. One of Goodfellas' most striking achievements is its refusal to simplify organized crime into a morality tale. Unlike earlier gangster films that often either glamorized mob life or delivered straightforward condemnations, Scorsese and Pileggi crafted a narrative that presents the allure of wealth, status, and power alongside the inescapable consequences of that world. From the beginning, audiences are drawn into a universe of flashy suits, expensive cars, opulent houses, and lively parties. The trappings of success are on full display, making the life of Henry Hill and his associates appear seductive and thrilling. Yet beneath this glittering surface lies a constant undercurrent of danger, paranoia, and moral compromise. The same characters who enjoy luxuries one moment are plotting betrayals or committing violent acts the next. The film depicts mobsters not as heroic figures, but as people whose wealth and power come at immense personal and ethical cost. Murders, intimidation, and prison sentences are never far away, and the camaraderie that initially seems so vibrant quickly unravels under the pressures of fear and mistrust. By the final sequences, Henry's descent into paranoia and eventual cooperation with law enforcement underscores the hollowness of the lifestyle he once celebrated. Critics and scholars alike have noted that this nuanced approach, neither fully glorifying nor wholly condemning, sets Goodfellas apart. Pileggi's nonfiction source material reinforces the same complexity, presenting crime as a world governed by its own seductive rules, but one that inevitably extracts a steep human toll. Scorsese's camera, his kinetic editing, and the naturalistic performances of the cast work together to immerse viewers in this morally ambiguous realm, making the audience feel both the exhilaration and the peril. By framing luxury as fleeting and violence as unavoidable, Goodfellas delivers a portrait of organized crime that is thrilling, immersive, and unflinchingly honest. Number 20. The film's legacy includes courtroom testimony and real-world fallout from Henry Hill's cooperation. Goodfellas' legacy extends far beyond its cinematic influence, reaching into the real-world consequences of the crimes it depicts. Henry Hill, whose life forms the backbone of both Nicholas Pileggi's Wise Guy and the film, became an informant for the federal government, providing testimony that led to numerous convictions of organized crime figures. The legal ramifications of his cooperation were significant. By naming accomplices and detailing criminal operations, Hill helped dismantle parts of the Lucchese crime family's infrastructure and exposed the inner workings of a secretive, tightly controlled underworld. This real-world fallout gives the film a documentary-adjacent quality. While Goodfellas is a dramatization, its events are grounded in actual legal cases, heists, and murders that Hill recounted in interviews and in court. The knowledge that the characters' actions had tangible consequences in the real world, murders investigated, criminals imprisoned, and lives permanently altered, adds weight to the cinematic depiction of mob life. Scenes of betrayal, violence, and paranoia are not just narrative devices. They echo events that led directly to indictments, convictions, and federal investigations. This tether to reality intensifies the film's impact, making the thrill of the lifestyle inseparable from its danger and legal peril. Hill's cooperation also shaped public perception of organized crime. Through his testimony and subsequent media exposure, audiences gained unprecedented insight into the inner workings, hierarchy, and culture of the mafia. Scorsese and Pileggi's adaptation of these events preserves this sense of authenticity, blending dramatic storytelling with factual underpinnings. In this way, Goodfellas is not merely entertainment. It serves as a vivid, almost ethnographic account of organized crime, informed by the real-world consequences of Hill's cooperation and the justice system's response to his revelations. What do you think about these facts? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.